Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this community meeting to introduce you to the current engagement opportunities for the new comprehensive plan. I'm Lisa Miller with the Comprehensive Planning staff team, and I'm joined by my colleagues Kayla Seibel, Nikki McDonald, Brooke Ganser, Carl Kolosna, Sarah Long, and Scott Waitman. We know that folks are coming to this meeting with different background information on this project and different levels of understanding about how the comprehensive plan impacts our community. So we're going to start by talking about how we're approaching this work and what's been done so far. Our purpose this evening is to introduce you to the new comprehensive plan project, to share the current engagement opportunities for the plan, walk through how to use the engagement tools we've created, and share ways that you can engage your friends and neighbors on this work over the next couple months. As we get started with some background, I invite you all, if you're willing, to share in the chat box your name, the neighborhood or community you're a part of, and share one thing that you value about our Durham community. If there's anyone joining by phone that would like to share, you can hit *9 now to raise your hand so you can be heard. Okay, I don't see anyone raising their hand, so we'll just keep moving on. Okay, our work on the new comprehensive plan started in the summer of 2019. As our work began, the city's equitable community engagement blueprint was being developed, and the city and county were both beginning to work towards more equitable engagement. Through early conversations with our colleagues in the Neighborhood Improvement Services Department, we established a commitment to work towards equitable engagement for the comprehensive plan based on the blueprint. So let's talk about what a comprehensive plan is, how it has and can impact equity in our community. Our comprehensive plan directs what can be built where in Durham. It guides what size and kind of homes can be built in different parts of the community, where schools and businesses can be located, and where streets should be built. The plan acts as a blueprint for how Durham will develop today and in the future. The plan includes recommendations and guidance for big decisions that a local government may make. How and where should farmland be created or preserved? How do we connect more residents to jobs and housing and schools? What are Durham's infrastructure needs, like water, sewer, transportation, and other services? What kind of environmental protections should we have? How should Durham care for its existing neighborhoods and longtime residents, particularly those who have been ignored or harmed by big decisions in the past? Durham looks the way that it does because previous plans and policies determined how it could grow and develop. In the past, government and private decisions about where to locate land uses, both desirable and less desirable, have not been equitable. This is not an accident and is one of the primary ways that racial discrimination is seen in our physical environment. For example, less desirable industrial land uses like incinerators, landfills, factories, and salvage yards have been placed within or near traditionally Black neighborhoods and away from traditionally white neighborhoods. At the same time, desirable land uses that are necessary for people to access daily resources, like small commercial areas and parks, are lacking or missing in many traditionally Black neighborhoods. Equitable access to the benefits of growth, development, and land use decisions are foundational in our current work to determine where different land uses should be located in the future. With all of this in mind, we began this project in the fall of 2019 and winter of 2020 with the listening and learning engagement for this project. We heard from over 1,000 residents what they wanted in an ideal Durham and what else was on their mind about Durham. With all of that input from residents, we asked, how do we listen to, respect, and honor the voice of residents who've been disinvested in or actively harmed by planning in the past? And how do we turn that lived experience into community goals and objectives? The community goals and objectives that were adopted by the county commissioners and city council this summer describe a clearly articulated vision from our residents for Durham's future. Now comes the hard work of translating this vision from our community into the technical planning tools that impact how land is used in our community. The new comprehensive plan will be made up of words and a map. The map will show a desired future place type for every property in the city and county. The words include policy recommendations, which will be the focus of engagement next spring. These policies will lay out instructions for how the planning department and the rest of Durham local government will work to make the vision of the community goals and objectives a reality, because there are limits to how much of our community's vision can be articulated solely through the map. We have currently developed a draft community-wide place type map that's the focus of engagement for the plan now. The intent of this map is to apply the community's vision to actual places in Durham. Our engagement over the next few months is focused on hearing from you on how we can better reflect the community vision in this draft map. When completed, the new place type map will replace the future land use map from our 2005 comprehensive plan. Since 2005, that map has been used to guide growth, to plan where new services will be needed, and to make decisions about whether to approve certain kinds of new development. However, the categories in the 2005 map are very general and don't provide enough detail about what places should be like. The proposed place type map includes more detailed information within the place type descriptions about what new development should look like, how it should function to serve residents and workers, and how it should be served by city and county services. To close out background on the project so far, we want to share some highlights of the kinds of places that residents want to see that came through in creating the community goals and objectives. Residents want neighborhoods to have safe and easily walkable access to schools, community centers, shopping areas, restaurants, and green space, integrated within and around neighborhoods to allow access to daily needs, connect with one another, and build relationships. Residents want to see neighborhoods change incrementally to incorporate a variety of housing options that are affordable and attainable to those with the least access to housing. Residents want to see an improved transportation network and connectivity throughout Durham by prioritizing residents who walk, bike, roll, or ride transit. Residents want to see proposed developments that preserve or restore the surrounding natural areas and promote and encourage walkability. When vacant lots in already developed areas are filled in with new uses, residents want to see this development fit in with the scale of the neighborhood and provide access to daily needs. And residents want to see some of the car-oriented places like older shopping areas with large parking lots incrementally change through the addition of buildings or the retrofit of these existing sites, so these places become more walkable with safe pedestrian, bike, and transit access. So now we have a short video to share with you all that talks about the different pieces of the comprehensive plan. And following that, we'll have time for questions and answers on all of the information shared so far. Next slide.
Hello, this is a presentation brought to you by the Durham City County Planning Department about the different pieces of the comprehensive plan. Our community is constantly changing. Think about your neighborhood. What has changed? What has stayed the same? Change in our community has impacts for residents who live in Durham today. Many residents in Durham have not benefited from this change and have been actively harmed by it. We need a better plan that can help manage this change in a way that benefits all residents. In Durham, the City County Planning Department regulates how land is used. There are rules about what each property can be used for, called zoning. These rules also regulate what developers are allowed to build. Planning decisions affect how our neighborhoods look, how we access the resources we need, And what infrastructure is needed to support life in Durham? Over time, local government has regulated land in ways that give some people more access than others. Access can mean access to better schools, jobs, transportation, or green spaces. Think about your neighborhood. Can you afford to live there? Are there grocery stores, schools, or parks that you can easily and safely get to? What's missing? What do you need more of? The rules in Durham need to be rewritten to work towards complete communities where everyone has access to the things they need, particularly those who have not had this access in the past. To start rewriting the rules, the Durham Planning Department needs your help to create a new comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan outlines a community vision in the form of policies and a map that say what should be built where in Durham. In practice, a comprehensive plan's PlaceType map and policies are used together to check if what a developer is proposing to build matches what the community wants to see. The PlaceType map and policies help guide decisions made by elected officials about whether development should be approved. Also, the PlaceType map and policies can help us decide if new zoning districts should be created to match what the community wants to see and can help work towards greater access to the things we need. As our community grows and changes over time, we will need to invest in the infrastructure to sustain our neighborhoods. Staff will use the PlaceType map to understand where future water, sewer, or transportation demand might be based on what kind of development is expected where, and plan for new or upgraded infrastructure projects. Think of the comprehensive plan as a roadmap to the future we want to build together. How would you shape Durham? Thank you so much for watching. Please visit ENGAGEDurham.com to learn more about the Durham Comprehensive Plan and get involved today.
Okay, so we wanted to take a few minutes to see if there are any questions that folks have on the information that's been shared so far before we start going into more detail on the PlaceType map. If you're interested in asking a question, you can drop it in the chat or you can raise your hand and we can call on you. We'll give folks a few moments to ask any questions they'd like. Okay, well, all right, we have a question just in the nick of time. All right, we have a question here. How binding is this comprehensive plan? We've seen recently that City Council has gone against the Planning Commission, so how binding is it when it comes to making decisions about what and where developers can build? This is a great question, and I think part of the difficulty that we're seeing in a lot of the cases that are coming through to City Council and the Planning Commission right now is that our plan that is in place is from 2005, and Durham was a really different community then, and the goals that the community shared through that comprehensive plan are not in line with our goals now. So this process is helping us come to hopefully consensus, but a clear articulated vision of what we're trying to achieve together. With that said, it is a guiding document. It is not law. So as the video mentioned, there are a couple of different ways that the comprehensive plan comes into play in decision making and in impacting development. One of those is providing the guidance for our Planning Commission and City Council However, it is a guiding document, not a legal document that must be followed. The other thing that the comprehensive plan can do in terms of rules for development is helping us understand when we need to change what lies in our zoning district and zoning regulations in the Unified Development Ordinance. So every single piece of land in Durham has rules under which it can be developed in some way right now. And our comprehensive plan will help us know if we need to change those rules as we implement this new plan. And changes to the Unified Development Ordinance and the rules within it, those are legally binding. So I hope that answers your question. And I'll wait a moment just to see if there are other questions that folks have. Okay, I am going to hand this over to Kayla to talk more about the PlaceType map. But if folks have questions that come up as we're talking, please feel free to put them in the chat or jot them down. We'll have time in the session later to both hear feedback, answer questions, and have some discussion. So with that, I will hand things over to Kayla.
Great, thank you, Lisa. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kayla Seibel, and I'll be walking through the second part of our agenda. We'll now transition to talk about some PlaceType examples and discuss how we use PlaceTypes in practice, and then we'll show specifically how you can provide feedback on the PlaceType map and PlaceType guide. Next slide. So generally, we anticipate that some areas in Durham are less likely to change or will not experience a lot of change over the next couple of decades. Some examples of places like these are parks and protected green spaces, as shown on the left, or established residential areas, as shown on the right, where there are small lots and many different property owners. You may still see some renovations or changes to the outsides of these buildings, or additions of smaller houses behind existing homes, but we don't expect large-scale physical changes within neighborhoods. Next slide. But we do anticipate that some areas in Durham will experience more change over the next couple of decades. Places that are more likely to change in Durham may include land without existing buildings, as shown on the left. That's of a field or a forested area. The image in the middle is of a large parking lot, and the image on the right of an older shopping center, again, that has a lot of parking space for new buildings and maybe more suburban in nature. Next slide. So to demonstrate the concepts that we've been talking about, these place types, and what we're engaging on this fall and how it applies to the real world, here's an example of a place in Durham that is not likely to significantly change, but may change incrementally. This is a Google Map view of the West Chapel Hill Street area, just west of the Durham Freeway. This area currently provides goods and services to Durham residents, and we can see that there are existing restaurants, markets, grocery stores. This area of Durham is served by bus lines with bus stops, sidewalks, and is served by city water and sewer. It could be an area where some of the lots here see the addition of new buildings or renovations over time. On the next slide, these are two images that show the West Chapel Hill Street area. You can see there are differences, major differences along the corridor in the types of buildings, where they're placed, and how walkable some parts are. There's also a lot of impervious surfaces in this area, meaning land that is covered in either concrete or asphalt where rainwater cannot pass through the soil easily. This can cause flooding when it rains. So some of these lots have buildings or structures on them now, and have minimal green space today. So any new development that happens in some of these places would not involve clear cutting a forest or disrupting protected natural areas like you may see on the edges of town. So when we think about places like this and how it may change in the future, we take into a few considerations, including the things I mentioned about existing conditions, what patterns we see in development happening nearby or recently, and how these sites might be served or are already served by infrastructure and services. We also consider community input and engagement that may have been done in these places in the past and what residents want to see here. However, a lot of times we're not always sure what residents want to see, which is why we have an initial place type map draft for Durham residents to share feedback on specific places and geographies that you know because you live and experience these places every day. So specifically for the West Chapel Hill Street area, as an example, our team looked at how the area currently has stores, markets, restaurants that currently serve the community and expect that this area would likely continue to serve the community in the future in similar ways with incremental change. So what that looks like on the map is a place type designation called neighborhood services, which describes primarily commercial that is walkable and accessible to nearby residents and serves the surrounding neighborhoods. Next slide. So as a reminder, and don't try to read this whole slide, the place type map is accompanied by a place type guide, which provides details on what the place type is. A snapshot of the place type guide is shown here for neighborhood services. This on the left is in English, on the right is in Spanish. And the description reads, neighborhood services provide ways for residents in nearby neighborhoods to access daily needs and services like daycares, pharmacies, community spaces, offices, and small-scale stores. These areas are located along main streets with buildings close to the street. So together, the place type map and guide work to identify which areas in Durham should be classified as what to guide future development. For this round, for fall engagement, we want the community to give us feedback on the map and the guide drafts. The big opportunity with this process is that residents have a first say in what areas in Durham should look like in the future before a project is proposed and before an application is being reviewed by elected officials before they consider new development. So staff has relied heavily on past engagement to make this initial draft, but we need your help to understand what changes should be made to those drafts. Next slide. And just another note about the place type categories. Durham is a big place, and this plan covers both the city and the county. So our places range from very dense, urban and walkable areas to rural and agricultural and large open spaces. We have 20 different place types in the guide that are supposed to encompass a range of places, but still be broad categories. Another part of this that helps us understand how to guide new development are the comprehensive plan policies that are being worked on right now. These policies are things that we cannot easily map and are crucial to guiding how development should occur, not just what the area should look like. So policies consider things like how development should fit into the surrounding area, who the development is serving, and other details like street trees, sidewalks, and green spaces. Basically, the place types provide a general idea of what different areas should be in the future, and we get more specific as we go along in the planning process with policies. We are working with groups of residents and staff to begin brainstorming policies now. So draft policies will be included for community-wide engagement in the spring. Next slide. So with that, I want to just very briefly show the engagement tools we have developed so you know how to find them and how to provide feedback. I'm going to start sharing my screen now and walk you through the engagement site. So just give me one moment. All right. Can anyone see that?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So this page is our social pinpoint site. It's our digital engagement website for the comprehensive plan. Here you can see what phase of the project we're in and how to participate and provide input. And we will drop the two URLs in the chat. We have the site in English and in Spanish. The Spanish can be accessed also by clicking this button, Español. The focus of this phase of engagement, as you scroll down, it describes, is on the PlaceType map. The map is made of place types, which are categories that describe how a place may look in the future and what the community wants to see there. The map shows where the places are located on every piece of land in Durham. Also, on the page are these community meetings with the registration links. You are in the first community meeting. Thank you for coming tonight. And the rest of them are identical with a loose geographic focus. Please help us share these meeting dates with your friends and neighbors as we go along the project. You can see there's some in November, December, and January. There are 3 different engagement tools that we're going to talk about tonight. The main one we're going to walk through is the map here at the top. And we have the PlaceType guide, which we'll look at briefly, as well as the resident engagement toolkit, which I will describe in a moment. So let's start with looking at the map. So you can just click here and let me scroll over to our map. Just get rid of this bar. Okay, here we are. So when you first see the map, it will be zoomed out all the way so you can see the whole county. That's what it looks like here. This is an interactive map that you can zoom in and out. You can read about all the proposed place types for an area and add a comment. This map is also accompanied by the Spanish text on the sides here. When you first open this map, you will see a splash screen, so a screen that describes what the map is, and we will also be linking a video to it that walks through how to use the map as well. It's not showing up right now because I've accessed the map so many times it remembered that I've seen the splash screen, so sorry about not showing that tonight. So once you dismiss the splash screen by checking OK, you see this version that I'm seeing here with the whole county and the legend here. So I just want to give a brief overview of the different tools we have here that will help in your review. So on the right-hand side, you have where there's a legend. This legend includes all of the draft place types. They're hyperlinked, so you can click on each one and read more about what they mean. The legend items, just very briefly, include an urban growth boundary and future growth area. So the urban growth boundary is this outer line that's covering this outer edge of the urban areas in Durham. It's a line that staff is proposing that city water and sewer and fire service not be extended past this line to keep these areas mostly rural and protect our environmental features. The future growth areas, that's kind of here in the middle, it's a little shaded, darker color. These are places that could see significant change if the city decides to add water or sewer service or fire service to those areas. So that's where we could plan for growth if the infrastructure was provided. Some more tools on the left. So as I mentioned, here's the legend of all the different place types, and you can click on them and it will open up a one-pager of each of the place types. On the left here, we have a plus and minus button to zoom in and zoom out. You can also scroll with your mouse. A location button is this circle. So that is the location of your device, your laptop, desktop, or phone. Where that's located, this will zoom you into a part of the map that you are approximately at right now, but you must give your browser permission to know your location. So when you do click that button, there will be a pop-up that asks you if you'll let it read your location. And also keep in mind that this location button is not perfectly accurate, so you may end up near where you meant to zoom in, but it won't get the location perfectly. And then a home button. Okay, so real quick, the location, the address bar right here. So if you know your address or know an address that you want to look up, you can easily put in an address. So if I just put City Hall, it'll come up with different addresses it'll try to predict, and you can click one of these and it'll zoom you right in to that property. It'll have a pop-up where you put in that address, and it'll show you exactly where that is and what the place type is, the abbreviation DT. So DT would be downtown, and you can also see that on the right here, this color. So let's say you're not interested in City Hall or the place type for downtown, and you want to zoom way back out. You can click this home button on the left. That'll zoom you right back to the beginning. There is also a measurement tool if you need to measure something here. And then if you need to change the background of the map here with different types of maps, if you need to see the aerial or the imagery. And then finally, here's a little printer symbol. And this symbol will show you, will let you print the image that you're seeing on the map. So if you zoom in, you can print a PDF or a JPEG or just an image of where you are and mark on that map as well if you'd like. So with that, we're ready to begin adding feedback. So that is as an overview of what this looks like. So if we zoom in, let's zoom into that West Chapel Hill Street area that we were just looking at on this place type map. Zooming in some more. And you have to zoom in pretty far to be able to see everything. You can see the street names, you can see the abbreviations for the place types here and all the different colors. Here you can click on any property and select it to add a comment. So if I select one of these red parcels or red properties here, that's under neighborhood service area, you get a pop-up. There you can view the place type guide if you need more context, if it's easier for you to read through the guide and one big attachment, you can do that there. And you can simply add a comment. So when you add a comment, it opens up to a comment form, and we're really interested in hearing information from you that is location specific. So the more specific you can get with your geography, the easier it'll be for us to understand what suggestions or edits you're making and where. So we have two options for how to add a comment. The first one is, let's say you're really familiar with that property and you have something to say about the place type that is designated. You can check my comment is about a specific property indicated on the map. And it'll show you, okay, this is the area that you've indicated on the map. We'll ask you what your comment is, and if you have any other feedback to share. Other feedback could be, let's say the place type designation, maybe you didn't have an edit or a suggestion for the place type designation, But let's say there's something written in the PlaceType guide that you wanted to tell us about. You could write that there. And then on the next page, there's a series of demographic questions that we ask and we standardize with all of our engagement. So that's there to fill out. It's optional. Let's say that you just want to give us a comment or your thoughts about a general area or a neighborhood or an intersection. You can select the second option, and it walks you through a series of questions by asking first, what is the general area you're talking about? Help us understand where you mean, because on the map you will still have to pinpoint a location, even if you're talking about a bigger area. And then we have a series of questions that you can help us understand. What do you love about your neighborhood or the area that you're commenting about? What do you want to preserve? What do you want to see more of, less of? And do you have any other feedback to share? Again, really open-ended, but we'd love to hear what you think about the initial draft and what kinds of aspects of your neighborhoods or the places you experience can help us make this map better. The one last thing to keep in mind is that the PlaceType, the comment that you add will show up on the map after you submit your form. So people will be able to see your comment, and you can see other people's comments as well. Your demographic information will not show up. That will stay private. So that is how you add a comment to the map. And I think that's it for the map portion. I know you probably have some questions. We'll circle back right after I talk a little bit about the guide. So again, just going back to our homepage, we just looked at the map here. We can also look at the PlaceType guide. The PlaceType guide also has the PlaceType guide link also has, as soon as it loads, a short survey if you'd like to give us any input on specific place types that we've drafted or the language that we're using right here. You can download the full guide here and you can view it in all of its written form on this page. And then finally, the resident engagement toolkit. So engagement for this project is really important. We want to hear from as many people as we can, including people who don't have easy access to the online tools we have here. So we've created a resource where if you want, you can download the resources, the materials that we've created for what is the comprehensive plan, how does it work, bookmark, postcard, community meeting flyers to help us spread the word. The placeMap activity and survey, as well as the demographic survey, can be downloaded and printed, and you can help other residents walk through adding input on the map. And then of course you could download a zip file of all the documents here. So that is a lot, and that's all I have for demonstrating the tools. And I haven't been able to see the chat, but are there any questions before we move on to the discussion portion of this about any of the tools that we just went through?
Give it just a minute more and see if anybody has any questions about the tools.
Yeah, and I see your comments in the chat. So thank you for adding those and responding, team. And you're the first group to see this map, so thank you so much for taking the time to look through that.
Okay, well, we'll have some more time for questions at the end about everything. So I think we'll move on to to the next section. Yeah, and Dave, that's there are some minor discrepancies between the legend and the labeling that is on there, and we caught those today, and we're waiting on the data to update. It updates through our servers through the night, so by tomorrow morning those should be fixed, and that's basically a reflection of some of these names that you can imagine have changed over time as we were developing them internally. But thanks for pointing that out. I think the N and the H looked the same to me when I was reviewing them earlier today. So I appreciate you catching that. So thank you, Kayla and Lisa, both for that overview. So today we've discussed basically at a high level what the comprehensive plan is, why it's important, and specifically about the place types, which are going to be the focus of engagement that's going on through basically starting now, our opening today, through the end of January. Kayla just shared with us a walkthrough of the mapping tool. And so now what we'd like to do is basically spend a little bit of time having essentially a condensed version of the sort of discussion and engagement that we hope that the tool will help facilitate. So our discussion today, as the name of the meeting implies, is going to be focused on the rough area of central Durham. So don't worry too much about that exact boundary of central Durham. It's just a general reference. It was a way to sort of roughly divide up the county into different areas. Basically, by central Durham, we're meaning the downtown areas and areas that are immediately adjacent to it. But if you live somewhere else, that's great. Please, we would love to hear from you as well. So what we're going to do quickly is do a little bit of what I hope will be kind of a fun grounding exercise. So to get us grounded, I'd like to encourage everyone to close their eyes and think about the space and the land that comes to mind when you think of central Durham or of your neighborhood or your community. So you're closing your eyes. Maybe imagine that you're a bird and you're flying in the air and you're looking down on the land and the space below you. As you're doing that, you're flying through the air, you see all the different land in Durham. So what do you see when you look down and you move around the area? What patterns are there in how that land is being used? And what sticks out in terms of how land is being used? There are some places that have really tall buildings. Some places have shorter ones. Sometimes the buildings are closer together, or in some areas, they're more far apart. There are places with little or no buildings at all, at least right now. And some places and land may have changed, maybe a lot in recent memory. Maybe you can remember a place where if you were flying over it before, it was all forested. And now there's something different there. So go ahead and open your eyes. What we would like to do basically to start is just sort of ask a guiding question, and we'll be dropping this in the chat as well. And we encourage anybody who's interested in responding. I think I saw some great responses already to our icebreaker. Basically, the question is, what changes to how land in your community is being used have you seen? And what changes would you like to see? And we really encourage you to be specific here. This is a part of the plan where we're not talking as much in the abstract anymore. We're talking about specific pieces of property. Every single property in Durham will get a designation on the place type map, which is a reflection of the vision of how we want that place to be and how it could change or stay the same. So what changes to how land in your community is being used have you seen? And what changes would you like to see? And please try to be specific. So say that one more time. What changes to how land in your community is being used have you seen? And what changes would you like to see? And so I'll see if there's anybody who'd like to raise their hand or type anything into the chat to get us started with that. That would be great. So again, we're thinking about what changes to how land in your community is being used have you seen, and what changes would you like to see? And if you'd like to get specific, that would be great. So Nikki put in the chat, there's a lot of storage units coming into the area that weren't there before. Nikki, could you talk to us just a little bit about sort of what that looks like or what that experience is as those changes happen?
Sure. My personal experience has been, they usually come to neighborhoods that are kind of overpopulated anyway. And they're usually in communities where it could be better service if that amount of space had been turned into an affordable apartment building or a few single family homes. And just as Durham moves forward, or anywhere that provides homes or places for residents to stay, that they're considerate of what they're bringing into the community and that it benefits the community just as much as it does the developer, and that there's a certain aspect of respect to the residents who have been there, that we're not pushing out seniors or families or making the taxes so high that people, especially elders who have been in their homes for eons and don't desire to sell or move out of them, that they're not forced out.
Yeah.
And they're not forced to have to find somewhere else to live, because we also see a lot of that.
Yep. Thanks for sharing that, Nikki. And while you were sharing that, we had a couple of folks responding in the chat, and I just kind of want to lift that up. Dave said, I live in Lakewood, and I think that the Chapel Hill Road corridor between Lakewood Avenue and Bivens has so much potential with great commercial options. There's Cocoa Cinnamon and something which has come in, which is great. You'd love to see more density allowed there, so there could be more customers to support those businesses. Also a variety of housing types. Something that really stuck with me in our first round of engagement that we did is it wasn't the Lakewood Shopping Center, but the Oxford Shopping Center, which, if you don't know, just has an enormous parking lot in the front of it. And somebody said you could fit a whole neighborhood in that parking area, and that's really potentially some of the changes that we're talking about that the comprehensive plan could guide. Let's see. Jeff shared, you're seeing rapid gentrification in many areas, particularly in residential areas. What used to be modest and moderately priced housing is being replaced with high-end housing that lower, moderate, and even middle income residents can't afford. And this is also changing the racial demographics in many areas. Denise shared, in the Fayetteville Street area, gentrification has displaced many residents from the South Side area and boosted land values, making them unaffordable tax-wise. And Bob shared one change with many multifamily residential buildings with no subsidized or below market rating, as far as he knows, would like to see a grocery store within a mile walk or less, and open space preserved and used. Those are all really great feedback. And again, with the map, what we'd really encourage you, and the purpose of this map is that sort of knowledge, that experience, that history that you all have as members of your community to be reflected in the map. And I think I missed one as well. Somebody just sent to me. Yes, Kaya, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. There's definitely often a lack of mixed residential space, specifically downtown, and a lack of green space in the downtown and central area. The only walkable space is in downtown, and there's a lack of sidewalks and bike lanes in predominantly poor areas and areas where people of color live. So that's another thing you could think of as you're sort of thinking about how land uses are across an area, changes and the patterns that we see. And that's what the PlaceType map, we want to create a map that more accurately reflects the values that we have as a community in terms of what land uses and how we use land together around each other. Let's see if anybody else. And again, if there's anybody who's comfortable speaking, if you'd like to, you can go ahead and raise your hand in the Zoom function, and we will turn the voice on. And Denise says, ensuring through policy that public parks will not be privatized or sold for development, perpetuity policy. That's a really good example of how Kayla mentioned the PlaceType map. A map just by itself isn't a complete picture. We need policies, and those are the words in the comprehensive plan And then those need to be translated into eventually things that are legally binding or specified policy, to make sure that the vision that's being articulated in the map can be implemented. And it's not just a map that's floating out there, but it has strength attached to it through the policies. And again, we've this phase of engagement that we're coming up on is going to be focused on the map, but in spring of next year, our next phase of engagement will kind of be putting together the policies and the map at the same time. See if there's anyone else. We had a couple of other, we have a number of sort of discussion questions, and I'll just read out some of them and see if that prompts any thought that anyone has. These are questions that we've been working with residents to develop. So what do you love about your neighborhood, and what do you want to preserve or stay the same? If somebody from my team could drop that into the chat, that would be helpful. So what do you love about your neighborhood, and what do you want to preserve or stay the same? And this is as we think about areas that are designated on the map that basically match what they already are. And by indicating them on the map, we're saying that we want these areas, as we talked about, there'll be small incremental change almost everywhere, but generally in a big picture, these areas would be staying the same. We can do one more question, see if that gets anybody thinking. What would you want to see more of or less of in your community? Are there things like, I think a number of people have mentioned changes that they've seen in the last couple of years or however long, that some of those changes are good and some of those changes are not so good. And again, this map is a way for us as a community to put together a vision of what we want our land uses to be in the community. And in many ways, be able to do that. We know that often it feels like responding to development is very reactive. And this is an opportunity to put a plan into place that we'll be using, at least for the next decade or two, to think about as development is being proposed, does that development match what the community has articulated? So older trees, natural green spaces. So Nikki Lakita said in the chat, and sidewalks, that's a big one, where they're missing and how sidewalks make it difficult for people to move in between these different land uses that could be indicated on the map, bike lanes as well. Okay, well, let's see. Oh, right as I said that, more things came into the chat. So again, I'll just read these out. So for my neighborhood, I definitely want to maintain green space. Green space is definitely at risk of being lost in many residential areas. And I feel like recently developers have come in, and when they see a huge group of trees, they see it as an opportunity to bulldoze it and not necessarily preserve. And that also leads to an increase in heat. And we also need more drainage in certain areas. So it's great connections to some of the environmental issues that we're dealing with. Jason saying, I live within walking distance of Sandy Creek Park, and being able to have this highly valuable recreation space nearby was a major decision factor in choosing where to live. So more parks and more trails for folks is important, and that access, like we mentioned, the ability not just to have it close to you, make sure that it's not on the other side of a highway, or there aren't any bike lanes or sidewalks or really any way to get to it by a car, which is what we see in a lot of places across Durham that have been designed around cars. And Denise says, love the history of the Fayetteville Street corridor and want to see its local historic preservation plan honored and protected from high density development. So we want to see infrastructure improvements commensurate with its history and significance to the history of Durham. And our corridor needs physical improvements like sidewalks and curbs. So getting at the importance of making investments in areas particularly that have been disinvested or ignored in by the decisions that we've made as a community over our history, but also making sure to honor the legacy and the history of places, even as changes are happening. So I think that that's really great as well. Okay, well, I think if anybody else has anything else, please drop it into the chat. We'll still be thinking. I hope that this conversation and sort of this line of questioning and thought and discussion is really what we're hoping that you all will do as you're looking at this map. And we really encourage you all to share this map and these resources and the tools through the Social Pinpoint website and everything else. So I think we're going to transition into our closeout. We just have a few more minutes, a few items that I want to walk through. So again, thank you so much, everybody, for coming today. So as a reminder, this phase of engagement, which officially started today, will continue through January, so up to January 31st. And once this phase of engagement closes, we're going to be compiling everything that we've heard from all the different formats, the digital maps, and we'll have the paper maps if you want to download them and everything else, working to revise the place types. So the next phase of engagement, as we mentioned, which is going to begin in spring, is going to be sort of a combination of more engagement on the map, sharing back what we think we heard and checking to see if that was right, as well as reflecting on and starting to think about the comprehensive plan, the policies, the words that are in the plan. So the planning team has committed to City Council and County Commissioners that we understand who we're hearing from as we do all of our engagement for the comprehensive plan. And this is important so that we know who we're hearing from and also who we aren't hearing from, so that we can adjust our engagement and outreach approaches as we go to fill in gaps to make sure that this work is reflective of the full diversity of our community. So our team is sharing a link to a demographic survey in the right now. We would really appreciate if you take a couple of minutes to fill that out so we can understand who we're reaching in these meetings. And this demographic information, we will share a high-level summary of averages basically, but this will, all the demographic responses will be kept confidential and anonymous. So again, if you have a couple of minutes to fill out that survey, we'd really appreciate that. Also, as part of that survey, we'd like to hear any thoughts, feedback, or reflections or recommendations that you have for how this meeting went. This is our very first one, and we're committed to taking feedback seriously. We'll make changes and adjustments as we go if we hear things that aren't working as well or things that could work a little bit better. So there's a opportunity to give that sort of feedback in the demographic survey as well. A recording of this meeting is going to be made available on the city YouTube page, and we'll send a link out to that as a follow-up. And so finally, and I see there's a couple more questions that have come into the chat, so we'll address those in just a minute. But finally, we'd just like to leave you basically with the last plug for getting involved yourself in this process. You already have by attending this meeting, and we would love to hear more of your detailed feedback on the tools that we've shared today, and also for getting folks that you know involved as well. Our team is currently dropping a link to the PlaceType map that Kayla walked us through, as well as the Social Pinpoint resources. So tell your friends, tell your family, tell your neighbor, take a look at the map yourself. Bring the resident engagement toolkit to a group that you know of, or maybe that you're involved with directly, and encourage them to explore it and to share it out with people that they know. We're also providing a link to the resident engagement toolkit, which has the links and downloadable options for everything else. So I see we have a few questions. Jason asked, we've gathered a lot of feedback over the past years, and some of it is location specific. Do you plan to go through that feedback and add it to the PlaceType map? So while we probably won't be like actually inputting that data into the map ourselves, as part of how we developed this very first draft of the PlaceType map, we went back through all of the feedback that we've gotten over the last phases of engagement, and we used that information to inform the decisions that we made in this very initial draft of the PlaceType map. And we know there'll be more opportunities to do that. So we did get some pretty specific geographic information at times in previous rounds, and we're going to be doing as much as we can to incorporate that into the work and make sure that even if it wasn't quite the right time for it necessarily, or it was a level of specificity we weren't quite at, we can put a pin in it, and now is the time to come back to it. Yeah, we've shared ENGAGEDurham at durhamnc.gov if you have any questions. Again, we've got links shared here as well. So I'll see, just as a closeout, if anybody has any last questions. And I'm kind of thinking out loud to my team. We have email addresses, and we can send some information out with all of these links as well. I know sometimes scrambling around the Zoom chat is not the most convenient thing. So we'll share out, we can blind copy everybody, share probably a summary of this and all of the resources and information. Let's see, I think there may have been one more question. Yeah, the local historic district status, seeing emphasis on historic preservation and acknowledgement of the value of historic fabric in the commercial sections of downtown. Absolutely. Okay, well, I think we've shared a lot of information today. And again, we hope that you will take this, absorb it, think about it yourself, interact with it, and share it with as many people as you can. You know, the more people that are involved in this plan, the better reflection of our community it'll be, and the better way it can guide us as we're changing and growing and developing into the future. So on behalf of our comprehensive plan team, just like to say thanks to everyone, and have a good evening.